Okay, so now we've extended our list class to be able to return a paged list. Let's see how we can use this in our application. Now we're going to want to get from our client the parameters we need. We need to know what page number they want, and we need to know what the page size is. So what we'll do to store that information is we'll create another new class and we'll call it paging params. And inside this class, what we're going to do is we're going to add a const for a maximum page size. We're effectively going to let the user select the page size that they want, but we're not going to let them choose 1,000,000. We're going to have a maximum page size. So what we'll do is we'll set a private constant and say max page size, and we'll just set it to an arbitrary number of 50. This can be obviously whatever is appropriate for your application. And then we'll add a prop for the int of the page number. And we'll give this an initial value of 1. So then what we want to do is set the page size. Now we've got a maximum page size of 50. And what we'll use in this case, instead of an auto-generated property, we'll use a full property with a backing field here. And we can use prop full to achieve this. So the private int is going to be the page size, and this is going to be our default value, and we're going to set this to 10. So if the client doesn't specify a value, it's going to be 10. And then we can have a public property, we'll call it page size, and what we want to do here is get the page size. We can actually shorten this line, and we can use an arrow and say page size, which does the same thing as that line was doing before, just in a shorter syntax. And then we can set the property, and what we can do is set the page size and set it equal to either the value, and we'll check this against the max page size. And if it's greater than the max page size, then we're going to set the max page size as the value, or it's going to be the value. So if the client asks for a max page size of 1,000, it's going to be set to 50. If they ask for a max page size of 12, it's going to be 12. And if they don't specify anything, it's going to be 10. So let's see how we can use this inside one of our handler classes. And we'll use our activity list to demonstrate this functionality. But the principles are going to be the same for any class that you want to paginate that is a list. So what we're going to do is instead of returning a list of activity DTOs, we're going to return a paged list of activity DTO. And we'll also do the same for the other elements in here as well. So we'll just update page list, and in here we'll swap list for paged list. And just the one at the bottom as well, we want to make this a page list as well. And let's go up to the top, and inside our query we need to take some parameters. And what we can use is our new paging params class. So we'll add a prop of type paging params, and we'll call it params. And then what we can do, we can just head down to our handler, and we're not executing our query at this time. We're going to defer it, defer the execution until we create a paged list. So instead of toList async, what we're going to do is specify as queryable. And we'll need to bring in system.link to use that. And because we're not executing anything to the database, we can't use await because as queryable is not an async method. And we'll swap var activities to just be var query. And then what we want to do, what we're returning from this result is we want to return a new paged list. And that's why we created the create async method in our page list class. So what we'll do, inside the success parameter, we'll say await, and then we'll say paged list of type activity DTO. And then because it's a static method, we can call this method directly without creating a new instance of the paged list class. And then we can pass in our query. As the source, we can pass in the page number, and we're going to get this from our request.params.pageNumber. And then we can pass in the page size, which is our request.params.pagesize. And let's just move this down so it fits on the same window. So now we're returning a paged list of activities, and this page list includes the properties such as current page, total pages, the total count, etc. And what we'll do, we'll just head across to our activities controller and fully get activities. What we'll do is we're going to take these parameters from our query string, and when we're receiving the query string parameters inside an object, we do need to give our API controller a hint about where to look for these parameters. So what we'll use is the from query attribute, and we'll say paging params, and we'll call it param, because I believe we'll get an error if we try and use params directly inside our class. Let's just bring in application core, and sure, this is a reserved word, so we'll just use param instead of params, and then we can pass our list query the parameters as well. So let's take out the parenthesis and just initialize it using the object initializer, and we'll say params equals param, and I'm missing a closing brackets. So without doing anything else, what we should be able to do now is test in Postman just to make sure that we're getting the correct number of activities being returned. And because by default we've got 10 inside our paging params class, I'm just going to drop this down to 2 temporarily so that we can see the results easily in Postman, because we're not adding the logic yet to deal with the pagination parameters coming back. So let's go across to Postman and take a look. And inside module 21, we've got a bunch of requests to do with getting our paginated responses and filtering, etc. But first of all, let's just log in as Bob, make sure our API is working, and we can issue a token. And let's go and see what happens if we go and get our activities with no query string. Now, what should happen is this returns to us 2 activities, because it's going to be limited by the default page size. So let's take a look. I'll click on send, and we can see past activity 2, and we can see past activity, well, it says 11, but that formerly was past activity 1, but I've only got 2 activities back from the API. Now, what we're not returning is any pagination information to the client. We haven't got a way to do that yet. And in fact, if we take a look at the test results inside Postman, there is a test set up for this just to make sure that we're receiving a pagination header. And if we take a look at the test itself, then what we're doing inside here is just testing to make sure that the response has a header of pagination, which gives you a clue as to how we're going to be returning the paginated properties to our client. We're going to use a header to do this in. And what we'll do is we'll take that next.